Yeah, we know this. You are smart, capable, you have built a solid career, maybe leading teams, maybe shipping products, maybe solving complex problems that most people cannot even see. And yet, you sit down at your desk and feel like you are drowning. Not because the work is hard, you can do hard, but because something inside you is broken. You cannot focus on simple things. You hyper-focus on the wrong things. I know that. You have 100 brilliant ideas, but cannot seem to finish any of them. Work harder, you discipline yourself more, you add another productivity system, and it still doesn't stick. So you blame yourself. You think, I should be able to handle this. Everyone else is fine. What's wrong with me? Here's what I have learned. Nothing is wrong with you, but the system you're trying to fit into, that's broken for how your brain actually works. My guest today is Frankie Berkoben, an executive coach who works with the smartest people in tech, Google, Airbnb, you name it, engineers and product leaders who are genuinely brilliant. And she sees the same pattern over and over. The people with the most potential are the ones burning out the fastest. Not because they are weak, but because they are trying to perform in a system designed for a completely different type of brain. Today, we are talking about why brilliant people underperform, why overwhelm isn't a motivation problem, and what actually changes when you stop trying to force yourself to fit and start designing for how you are actually wired. If you have ever felt like you are capable of so much more than you are delivering, this conversation is for you. Frankie, welcome to the Growth Hacking Culture Podcast. Lovely to have you.
Fantastic introduction. And as you were saying that, I could feel my own agitation rising because I work with so many people. I hear these stories all the time. And of course, that's been part of my experience too. So you were really twisting the knife there.
Listen, Frankie, I have been through this and I know it. That's why I show a little bit more of passion than usual. And also, I'm very interested about the topic. And let me start just by asking maybe a stupid question, but who cares? There is like a kind of a specific pattern I have observed. So you are incredible, capable person, amazing track record, suddenly hitting a wall, and they describe it as overwhelm. But is overwhelm really the problem, or is it a symptom of something else that there is behind?
It can be both. So the definition of overwhelm is more than you can handle. And it can be more physically, it could be more logistically, or it could be more emotionally. And so, subjectively, the symptom is feeling overwhelmed, or objectively, in terms of like root cause, is that just it's exceeding your capacity or exceeding anyone's capacity. The laws of space and time make it impossible to do this much work or juggle this many, tools, plates, projects, etc. And so, in some senses, my answer to is it overwhelm or is it a symptom of something else? The answer is yes, it could be both or either. But the really interesting thing here is it's about your responsibilities exceeding your capacity. And sometimes our responsibilities like creep up and up and up, and our resources or capacity stays the same, or sometimes our capacity dips. And that might be because you're spread across multiple areas, or you're sick, or there's just like a lot of workplace stress, or people are being laid off around you. It's been layoff season for the past 2 years. And so it's the mismatch between our responsibilities and our resources. And that gap is where the overwhelm comes in. That's both logistical and emotional.
Frankie, but we live in a world where we look at athletes or even these heroes that people have about that where founders make billions of dollars and they're telling you, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then I go to bed at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And we have these standards made by social media, made by also by the people themselves to showcase the fact that you can handle, because you used the word more than you can handle, that I can handle more, but it's about you being tough and making it. Is that a reality? But Frankie, you have seen Elon Musk talking about how many hours you work. This person is giving a wrong message, but people admire that. And people even forgets when he says stupid stuff.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a reality that people have that expectation, and that expectation that we are machines. But we're not, we're humans. We have variable capacity. We have physiological needs like amounts of sleep. And it is true that you can hustle. You can do these things, but it's not sustainable. Or you need immense amounts of support. A lot of these founders who have their 5 a.m. ice baths and meditation routines, if they have kids, who's picking that slack? If they have administrative work or own a house or anything like that, there has to be additional support around that. So it's about, yes, you can do any one thing to incredible degrees if that is the only thing, or if you are absolved of responsibility in so many other areas that maybe other people don't have the luxury of having. And then another part of this is you can do things for very short periods of time. And it feels so good when you're in flow, when you're immensely productive, when you're vibe coding till 2 a.m, that sort of thing. It feels amazing and you don't want to lose that. But our bodies catch up. You can achieve things, but at immense cost, and you don't realize it in the moment. But I've seen and worked with plenty of people who've developed heart problems or autoimmune disorders as a result of decades in the more, do more, growth at all costs, personal and professional growth at all costs mindset. So yeah, it's a kind of, as you say, it's a crazy belief, and yet we hear it all the time, so we believe that it's more pervasive, and then that becomes the bar that we compare ourselves to. And we forget that we aren't robots. And, even robots have needs, right? They need to go down for maintenance, and sometimes they go off and do the wrong thing. Anybody who's worked with AI chatbots knows this. Yeah. And so part of this is really zooming out and seeing what's actually true, and what's actually true on a longer timeline than any given day. But yeah, what are your burnout cycles? When do you, sorry, you go ahead. Yeah.
No. I love the way you are discussing it. And I can feel, and I know because the fact that you are living in very close to all these startup founders, you have certainly seen the worst and maybe the best of how people handles, especially when they're young. These guys, they don't have to sleep so much, and they have this drive to do 7 pitches per day, to go out of work at 10 o'clock and then go party until 3 o'clock and then be ready for a pitch with a venture capitalist at 8 a.m. What have you, I love gossip, by the way, Frankie. What have you observed? The good and the bad, the people that have routines that are good and people that have routines that are super harmful. And these guys are going to die of heart attack at 31.
So there's also another class of founders, which are 30s, 40s parents, or who've decided not to become parents, but are kind of slightly older in their careers. Physiologically, we don't have as much energy. I'm in my early 40s right now. And there's this more of a sense of discernment, and there's a BS radar, but also you can't ignore some of those physiological costs. So some of those founders are so much more precise and discerning, and they invest their efforts. It's not a scattershot approach. It's not a numbers game with indiscriminately. It's about curating relationships. It's about a relationship with themselves that honors their strengths, their boundaries, their values, their capacity, and working within that. There's a Series B doing a Series C raise founder that I'm working with right now. This is his third, I believe, startup. And he has a schedule that goes all over the place, but there's consistency in terms of what he does, but not necessarily when he does it. So it's that flexibility and that kind of breathing room to invest time where it is needed, but without a prescriptive way of saying exactly when and how it should be done. But also, it waxes and wanes. Some weeks it is 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. Other weeks it's 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. And then spending time with his kids, or going to dinners and things like that. There's something else I was going to say, but it's now slipped my mind. It'll come back if it's relevant.
It will come back. But Now, the vibe that I'm getting here is that there is not a prescriptive way how you should handle your time or your focus during the day, but there is something that is essential, which is the relationship with yourself. You use that word. And for me, translating to self-awareness. So I can do today 18 hours, it doesn't matter. But if I know that I'm within my limits and that maybe tomorrow I can do 3 hours and spend the rest of the day with my kid playing ball or even with my dog or whatever. Is that correct? Self-awareness plays a role that it is important in this process.
Yeah. And I'd even go more than self-awareness. It's self-acceptance or self-compassion, which is kindness and discipline coexisting. So it's seeing the reality of you're not a robot. You're not a 22-year-old founder with no responsibilities. And even if you are, like at some point, your health will catch up to you. Your sleep needs will catch up to you. Your nutritional balance, and for many, and I work with founders and also senior leaders who have a lot of responsibilities, but in many ways, your physical, emotional, and mental health is a business imperative. And nobody apart from you can prioritize that to the same degree as you can. Your health is a business imperative, especially with founder-led brands where the culture is driven by the personality, the values, the insights, the sparkly brain, the ideas of the founding team. And so if you can't access that joy and conviction that gets people to buy into your ideas and invest, if you can't access the creative problem solving that allows you to adapt and pivot when conditions change, that can be detrimental to the health and longevity of your entire business.
So these sparks that you feel in your brain, because there is a lot of excitement, getting the next funding, there is new people, there is a new product, new features, and also sometimes there is some money coming that you can spend whatever you want. What is actually happening in the brain of a person, not only a founder? So let's talk even about the corporate guy who is overexcited because things are going well, because he can deliver, because he's everywhere, he's listening to people, he spends time building relationships and so on. What is happening in the brain of this person?
So to make sure that I'm getting that question right, what's happening in the brain of someone who is really excited and sees their potential, but may not be experiencing the high performance that potential promises? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not a mind reader, but I can tell you about two sets of people. One is everyone, and the other one is the clients that I work with. Potential is what we're capable of when we are at our most well-resourced. It's peak performance, which requires certain conditions to be met. The stars are aligned, or you're firing on all cylinders, or you've had 3 months of great sleep, these sorts of things. And we have this idea that peak should be accessible all the time. So first of all, that's statistically impossible. Peak is by definition not average. And then there's also this expectation and fallacy that every peak should become the new baseline, and that growth is the only, that staying still or consistently maintaining that peak performance is called plateauing, and plateauing is bad. So there's some just expectations that a lot of people have in the especially Western corporate working world. And I grew up in the UK and now work in the US. So this is, the culture that I'm really talking about. So there's potential, which is, if it's elusive. Yes, you can achieve it sometimes, but you shouldn't be. And it's impossible to expect that you can achieve it at all times. And so performance, what actually happens, is inherently variable because we're humans and we have inconsistent supports, resources, needs, and we have seasons, we have, daily, diurnal, weekly, monthly rhythms. And so what's going on in your brain is that the gap between peak potential, peak performance or high potential, and inconsistent performance, that gap signals there's something wrong with you. It signals I'm not enough. It signals like, that there's a deficiency. And we've internalized a lot of this as, as on us rather than, well, here's the reality of it. Like, let's zoom out and just look at this from the point of view that I just described. And so, of course, you're going to fail. And so a lot of very ambitious, extremely capable people, especially people who are nonlinear thinkers, very associative, who see around corners, who see potential and consequences and opportunities that most people don't. About 25% of the Western working world identifies as nonlinear thinkers, is that gap becomes bigger because your expectations are higher, because your capability is higher, but your capacity remains the same. But actually an interesting thing, sorry, I'm gesticulating, hopefully, hopefully those listening in without video can kind of get what I'm trying to get at here, is that gap creates shame. And shame suppresses our creativity. It causes our physiological and nervous system to go into more of a kind of fight, flight, or freeze mode, and to grasp at maladaptive coping mechanisms, like waiting till deadlines for priorities to become clear, or using extremely negative self-talk and like toxic grit in some ways in order to force ourselves to be better, to try harder, as opposed to listening to, well, what does my body and brain tell me right now? Like, what actually works for me? And so what then happens is the shame then suppresses our capacity even more. And that's around executive functions. Our prefrontal cortex goes offline in some ways. And so we're unable to access the very things that enable us to perform at high levels or even at average levels. So what happens is, with high ambition, high potential, the people who are extremely brilliant, and it doesn't have to be intellectually brilliant, it could be socially or athletically, creatively brilliant. Giftedness comes in many forms. With that high, it also amplifies the lowness of the low. The high potential also can lead to lower performance because of the role of shame in there, and the role of shame on executive functions, which is our ability to conceive of, make sense of things, plan them out, initiate, follow through, complete, remember, communicate, all of those things, and regulating our attention and emotional state.
It is quite powerful what you're saying, but I want to add my 2 cents. And the reason is because I know that there is people out there still believing that, yeah, when we want something, we have to imagine it and we are going to reach it. And it's about discipline and strength to continue going forward. What you're saying is that a founder or somebody who is very ambitious and creative in the corporate world can be more sustainably growing on the long term if he cares about himself. Something that people forget is that less than 8% of founders will survive the second year. And I have seen it. So I have seen people suffering because of that. And it's not because they are weak. The idea was creative, but they couldn't manage the load of work that comes from the fact of creating a team, managing investors. Investors are creepy. They eat your brain. You think, you dream of them during the night. Frankly, I have been in that area, and I still remember the dreams that I had with some investors who were asking for crazy stuff. Anyways, so it's about a matter of survival. If you want to survive this 3 years gap that where most of the people have disappeared, then you have to manage yourself a little bit better in terms of this gap between my capacity and where do I want to be. And we need to have more recurrent behaviors in order to manage it and get rid of this shame, because only awareness about where you are today, what is your current capacity, can help you out in the long term. This is emotionally, I'm feeling it, Frankie, because I remember when I started to be a founder like very late, like at 45 or something like that. And this story about raising money was killing me. I was having, I was going to have a second burnout after I left my corporate job because of a burnout. Anyways, and there is this belief that the problem about being overwhelmed is a problem of motivation of or discipline, and is probably wrong, right, Frankie? It's nothing has nothing to do with discipline or motivation.
No, I mean, we're on the same page here, and it's a problem with a mismatch of expectations, and there's a fit problem between the system, the expectations, the norms, the myths and mantras that persist and are upheld by, oh, you need to be working 996, or that, if you're not hustling, if you're not raising, then you're not going to succeed. And there are plenty of alternative funding models, bootstrap founders, or who eschew VC funding or outside funding completely, or stick with angel rounds, and then are like, okay, well, we're good with this because we don't want to become the next unicorn. So I think there's the motivation and discipline thing here is what's true for you and what are your needs, and how much are you drinking the Kool-Aid of the only way to be successful is exponential growth trajectory, 1 billion valuation, and the behaviors that then go into that. And so, I'll put it to you. If there's a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, which one is wrong? Which one
It's
needs
the person.
So that's the narrative. Like the systems that we've built and upheld, and it's, capitalism it's a type of system, and especially individualistic capitalism. I'm not an economist, so I may not be using all of the terms correctly, but individuals conform to a system rather than a system flexing to fit individuals and humans, and not necessarily an individual, but collections of individuals, human needs. Like the work week is, assumed to be 40 hours because that was what made sense and what unions fought for in a manual industrial era, but not the thought, like the white collar, the mental work era. And 40 hours, your brain is not on in the same ways, in the same predictable ways. Like there's balance. Sometimes you're more creative. Sometimes you're more strategic. Sometimes you're really gregarious and having great conversations. Sometimes you just want to be deep in a hole and just focus on one thing. So yeah, your brain might be working, but these expectations of it's a switch that you flip and you're capable of any type of work at any type of time. And so I like what you said about recurrent behaviors. And the goal of behavior change is for it to not be about reliant on willpower, but supported by a system or environment or context. That it shouldn't be, that it should be there should be cues or supports or nudges or facilitation within the environment to make the thing that needs to happen more easily without so much friction. Because we only have so much cognitive and emotional capacity. And if you're making a ton of decisions about what tool to use, where to find that document, this is why automations are so helpful, is it delegates a lot of the bots or agents, right? Is that delegating a lot of that load to a supportive system or environment really helps. It means that you're not reliant on willpower, on great resources of discipline. It means that your tank doesn't drain by 10 a.m. and you still have things to go on. So that's what I'm thinking about here in terms of square peg round hole. There's a little bit of both, that it's an individual can change some of their behaviors, but not their values, not their inherent challenges. They often can't change their strengths. You can acquire new tools or strengths or frameworks that help you, but you can't fundamentally change your needs for sleep, say.
That's true. For me, the takeaways that I have got until now is that part of the journey to be able to manage our capacity to handle overwhelm is one is this step of self-awareness that is connected directly with the creation or designing systems that can include a moment to to know where you are in that specific day. It's not about where you are for the next 3 months because you don't know. And then creating consistent behaviors in order to address certain flaws that you may have or that are harming your capacity. And that is beautiful to have, to create a system that makes it something that is sustainable for the longer term. That's point one. You know what? You made me think, I don't know why, about the story of the founder of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, an amazing person, very creative, very driven, but on top of having this company, he went into behaviors that were self-destructing for him. Even though he cares so much about people, he had a lot of empathy with the people working with him. The fact is that he lost track of himself. And he was going into party animal sessions that broke him. Because at the end, if the only thing that you have in your life is success as per the measures of society, then you feel a little bit empty if you don't have family or something else that drives the reason why you are creating. Is that correct, Frankie?
Yeah. Intrinsic motivation is key. And sometimes, thinking about human development, in childhood, we think about fitting in and mimicking. In adolescence, there's more of this like standing out and figuring out that you're slightly different and think about things differently. Than in early adulthood, it's this both, assimilation and individuation, or standing out. But then, which means that 20s, early 30s generally tend to be about other people's approbation, other people's approval, acceptance, checking the boxes of what is formally known as success. And a lot of your goals that you plan for and design your life around start, then. And then so what usually happens is, this midlife period where you start to recognize, wait, that isn't what works for me. I feel an emptiness because there's a mismatch between the values of my environment and my personal values. And this mismatch between values is actually causing, that cognitive dissonance. And oh gosh, what do I do with that? And so that often leads people to burnout or to make big sudden changes in an attempt to find that alignment quickly. So whenever I work, so I'm, as you mentioned before, I'm an executive coach, and I work with people who are extremely brilliant and who tend to require a deeper why that is meaningful personally than just this is the way it should be done. That the what and the how are secondary to a strong personal why, a reason, a value, this is what more like a vocation, or this is personally meaningful to me. And when those things are present, there is no stopping these people. They're like racehorses, like rocket ships, anything like that.
Yeah.
But if something changes and that big personal why, or what is important to them, is masked or suppressed or just not there to the same degree anymore, maybe because they've changed or maybe because the situation changed, that level of success and motivation goes away. And so, as you alluded to before, like, I started my career in coaching with primarily gifted ADHD professionals in tech. And there's an interest-based motivation system rather than importance-based, which can look like you only work on things that you're interested in, which has, value judgments associated with it. But it's a neurological thing. And all of us, to some degree, do experience that. When we love something, we invest in it. When we love something, we throw ourselves into it. And so coming into that, I'm not totally familiar with Tony from Zappos' demise or decline of his personal empire, but it sounds like this is a very normal phenomenon for people who are entering their 30s, 40s, or, in 30s, 40s, 50s, this midlife period where you're suddenly like, whoa, what I thought was important was shaped by my environment. And I know myself more now. I know myself differently. I think, and now I have, so it usually starts with this sense of malaise. Something's wrong or something's missing. And people can go for decades without ever finding out what that is and then changing it. So in my coaching with people who are like, I'm doing okay, but it doesn't feel great. I know I could be feeling awesome in my job, there's something and I can't put my finger on it. And I've tried this, this, and this, and this. And so where we start is, who are you? Who are you? And who do you want to be? What version of yourself do you want to be? And is it an idealized, fictionalized version? Or is it something that is deeply held values that you have that will create a true motivation? And then so we go through other aspects like what bandwidth types do you often have difficulties with? What drains you and what lifts you up? I mean, social, sensory, physical, emotional, creative values, etc. And then aspects around processing modalities. Like we're thinking about if we have the why sorted, but still the what and the how are challenging. Let's look at what happens there for you. Where are things easier for you? What situations, contexts, or modalities of interacting with information or tasks really work well and have a sense of frictionlessness and ease and flow to them. And then it's applying design thinking and iterative development to this knowledge to then be like, okay, well, how can I reduce friction in my daily life? And it's not about excessive use of willpower and grit, but it is about where can I make it easier for myself to perform at the level where performance comes easily. So we're designing for strengths. We're designing for what works, not just, throwing spaghetti at the wall and be like, well, that worked, but I don't know why. So a huge part of this is understanding why your brain operates the way that it does, why it operates best in some scenarios and not others. And then understanding those root causes, those crucial ingredients and necessary factors, and then building in your systems, habits, tools, technologies, frameworks, how your days are structured in order to give you more of that. And that is so freeing.
I understand that, in fact, your job consists mainly in removing these frictions, creating an efficient system to co-creating, in fact, with a person, an efficient system so that you remove any friction. And one of the frictions that you have mentioned is about understanding the dimensions of your capacity. You know why? Because as you said, when you have found the purpose on what you are doing, your capacity is not the one when you are doing something because you are getting paid for it. And I still remember let's say, an average of 11 to 12 hours per day in the corporate world compared to my 11, 12 hours of my life today. It is different. I was hating my life back then. I wasn't sleeping good. I was overtired, feeling like with very little capacity to create ideas. And today I just wake up happy. I sleep my 7 hours and I'm a different person. It's the same number of hours. The capacity has changed just by the fact that I've added something called purpose on what I'm doing. Before, it wasn't under my control. It was, they were selling whatever they were selling, and that wasn't my life, right? It's difficult to size the capacity alone, in fact, because you don't think about it. Back in the days, I wasn't thinking about it.
And this is where different frameworks or, simple category systems or, just schemas for thinking about and naming things that are often intangible or harder to describe or explain. Like human psychology is very fuzzy. Like there's 1,000 different ways that you can and taxonomies that you can use to describe purpose, meaning, flow, like motivation, performance, etc. But what you're speaking to is the force multiplier of purpose, and that when purpose is aligned, when you are doing something you believe in that is tied to your passions and also your strengths, and that you have the external support as well as maybe like internal support, right, that you're giving yourself, then you find yourself with more cognitive capacity. You find yourself with more creative capacity, more emotional. You're more kind of open to possibilities and what could go right than to what could go wrong in a more narrow view and kind of more catastrophizing. You have more energy physiologically. You're more attuned to your body's needs. I mean, that can be a blanket statement because sometimes when you're so passionate, you can be like, wait a minute, it's 3 p.m. and I haven't eaten yet. But also, yeah, like you tend to be much more outgoing, or at least to be out in the world and noticing people, whether it's, passively engaging in social scenarios or you know, initiating those. So I think of this is kind of a tool that I often use, or a framework is 7 types of bandwidth. And so those are creative, emotional, mental, physical, sensory, social, and then values. And these are resources that are renewable. You can use them in passive or active ways. Sometimes you have a lot in one tank and not in others. So you can use that to kind of, oh, well, if I'm feeling more creative, but I'm tapped out on like deep, strategic thinking, well, what can I do here? Like, it's going to be brainstorming, or maybe I have more social capacity. Great. Thursday afternoons is when I'm, is when I do all of my one-on-ones and I'm just in social mode, that sort of thing. So it enables you to go where your energy is and to choose how your life is structured, in a week to week basis, but also where you're investing your time, where you're investing your energy, what you're building and what you're leaving behind. It's a very powerful way of discerning how to
It
get that
is.
that feeling that you were describing.
Let's say that someone is sitting at a desk right now and listening to us, feeling completely overwhelmed, knowing something has to change. What's the first thing they should actually do? But not like find a therapist or take time off, but something concrete.
Yeah. Well, this one was really tough because I was like, well, there are 10 different things that I would choose. But I'll give you a selection of them. One is look for where you have bandwidth. And I just listed, 7 types of bandwidth. Where do you have excess that you can use to shore up where you feel drained? And then another aspect of that is looking at what's already going well. It can be very tempting for something not going well in one area of life to then create a sense of, well, this is so big and powerful and pervasive, a feeling that you start looking for things not going well in other areas of your life. So there's a kind of perspective taking, like, let's zoom out. What is actually going well? What's ticking along and doesn't need intervention? What am I and it's not toxic positivity or like gratitude that feels hollow, but it's kind of taking stock and being like, oh, you know what? I have such a supportive family. I have coworkers that I love. But this role isn't really doing it for me. Like I'm just not so into the internal politics that is happening here. Or wow, this thing that I've been building for 2 years, I've changed, but the product hasn't. Or this, of what I've built, the structure I've built this startup around is no longer what works for me. So you can start thinking about, well, what is working so that you can keep what works and let go of or change some of the other things. And another way of thinking about this is there are 3 things you can do in any situation where it feels like there's a mismatch. There's change yourself. I recommend not doing that wholesale. Like that is our default. I just need to try harder. But there are things that you can do. What can I change to support myself? What can I change so that other people can support me? What do I need that I'm not currently asking for? What advice have I been hearing again and again that I haven't been trying? So that kind of change yourself. Accept the situation as it is. Like a lot of, so Buddha says pain is inevitable, but suffering isn't. Suffering is optional. That it can suck, but it sucks more if you're dwelling on how much it sucks. And so if you're like, okay, all right, for the next quarter, it is going to be more challenging. Like there's been turnover in the team. It's been more challenging raising this year than it was last year. My expectations are like, there's a time bound. I can tolerate this, and it's a decision. I can tolerate this. It's not ideal, and I'm accepting it. And then the third thing is change the situation. And that can be removing yourself from the situation completely. So if you're an employee, that is often a lot easier than if you're a founder.
Yep.
You can remove yourself from that structure, from that system, or you can move countries, houses. You can break up with, your partner or your co-founder even. Like there's elements here. So it's about finding that agency again. Where do you currently have resources? Where do you currently have agency? and what are some choices that are available to you, and encouraging yourself to be wacky and creative. Like, do a brainstorm rather than go into what's feasible right now, because we have a lot of tunnel vision when we feel worn down, when we feel like we don't have the resources for what we have right now. And that negativity bias just compounds because we scan for threats more than we scan for things that are going well. So it's look towards, what do you have? What can work? What is working? Exactly.
My favorite is the one when you mentioned about the having the perspective. And it's my favorite because it took me time because I was also a little bit biased with the fact that, yeah, it's not about feeling happy with what I have. Because this is what we usually think that, yeah, we take the things that are going well and the things that are going bad, and then we say, okay, it's going well overall. Well, no, it's not like that. Having the perspective is just having this capacity that allow us, for instance, to give an advice to a friend who is in pain, emotionally in pain, suffering, but we are the third person and we are capable of giving good advice. But when it is about us, we suck because we are into this emotional state that does not allow us to see reality. Is just about having the perspective is about recalibrating resources, what is the real situation, in order to make a plan about what action I should be doing. A behavior should follow up on that perspective thingy. So it is not about how did you call it, toxic positivity. It is about having perspective about the situation. Frankie, I love that. And this is one of the hardest things that for me to do. And I still work in progress, but the more we do it, the more we practice it, even in a daily basis, because it's not an exercise that has to last 1 hour. No, it's sometimes just 5 minutes
Right,
of just
exactly.
having the clear mind about where am I today. And that works when you better when you do it consistently.
And in the product world, this is framing the problem accurately. It's having an accurate problem statement. And, emotions are data. Like,
Mm,
emotions are logical responses to our perception of threat. It's that we can use that to inform, I'm feeling this, which means that I'm likely to be seeing it this way, which means that I can problem solve with a more accurate problem statement. Like, I'm feeling stressed, and that is leading me to look for more things that are going wrong. Therefore, with this more accurate framing, I can access the problem solving logic based capability of, oh, well, what would you say to a friend? Like, and it does take it into the, safer problem solving space. Like, a lot of problem solvers are very comfortable with analysis and not very comfortable with emotions. And you don't have to be woo woo or mushy about it. Just like, huh, interesting.
exactly. I love the fact that you are combining design thinking, like doing iterations about everything that we see in the world is a hypothesis that we must go and try to validate. The startup guys understand it. The people in corporate, there is still like a very low percentage of people of corporate who are familiar with the concept of design thinking, but it's design thinking is basically, instead of thinking about having great ideas, is you are focusing on understanding the problem, framing the problem as you mentioned, and you spend most of the time just validating what you observe and doing iterations and releasing a little bit potential solutions instead of focusing, oh, I have a great idea. No, let's see what the real problem is. This is what we should be trying to do with ourselves, understand a little bit in an iterative way what is going on with us. Love it, Frankie.
And I will say that that's really hard. That
Yeah.
people, like, I work with a lot of design and engineering and product professionals who do this and have been doing this for their entire careers, and who think in this way when it comes to products or initiatives or something outside of work. And so they have all the tools, but they're not or mindset or belief that this works. But when we apply it to ourselves, we're still stuck in that more waterfall way of thinking of, this is the end goal and this is the only way to get there. And woe betide us if we learn that our assumptions at the beginning of the project or at the beginning no longer serve us. So that's really how I approach my coaching work. And also, it's so hard to do that for yourself because we diminish and, like, disrespect our own time a lot. If there's something that other people are reliant on, we're social creatures. Of course, we're going to do that. If there's something that, that financial well-being is reliant upon, same thing. And so having a dedicated space and time and thought partner to do that is so precious. I'm a coach myself, and I need coaching spaces for me to do that for myself. It's impossible to do it on your own. Well, it's not impossible, but it's harder. But let's reduce.
Yeah, much more harder. 10 times harder. Let's say it. It's better
Yeah.
when there is a
Yeah.
person, and it's even better when the person has a systematic way of doing it. I wouldn't say that I'm crazy about all type of coachings. No, but when there is a process and I see the milestones saying, so we are going to be doing in session 1 this, session 2 this, instead of going around the soup 10 million times, that approach where I don't see the end, that's something that is scary for me. But if a coach has the right method in system that I can understand with my little brain, then I'm awesome. And I love by the fact that you are combining this design thinking approach with understanding ourselves and our sense of overwhelm in a more structured manner. Frankie, how the hell do we get hold of you if we have more questions about your systems, how you can help either awesome tech people or non-tech people to get the best out of them?
Well, the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. Frankie Berkoben, Berkoben, and I'm sure you'll have this in the show notes. And also my
Yes.
website, which is frankieberkoben.com. And I'd love to hear from anyone who's been listening in, what specifically resonated with you. So do feel free to DM me, or once we post this, to chime in the comments. Yeah, it's I I'm based in San Francisco, and a lot of my work is with people who are here in the tech world. But I will say that there's founders and senior leaders. There's people who are in financial and legal and medical professions as well. That it's not about necessarily like the context, but it's about how your brain works, and it's the mismatch between responsibilities and resources, and feeling like you're called to more and that you have such high potential, and just something's getting in the way and you haven't been able to figure out what it is. So I'd love to chat with anybody who's feeling themselves in that situation.
Thank you very much, Frankie. It was lovely to host you in the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Have
Oh
an
my gosh,
excellent
such a
day.
pleasure, Ivan.